Well, Phil, we're here in the Pinewood Community Pub in Pulrose. Great turnout from people tonight. We were hearing from the candidates standing for Douglas South: Claire Christian, Gerard Higgins, Sarah Maltby for the Manx Labour Party, and Paul Quine. I think it's another one of those where in my view, four very strong performances.
Yes, they were, and to a certain extent I'm having to be extra critical tonight just to try and tease out some of the differences, because they were all very strong. They made very good and strong points, the whole lot of them. All, in my estimation, are capable of being elected. Whether they represent my views is another matter, but some very, very interesting issues that came out tonight. I mean, the one constant, of course, was that we need to cut the inefficiencies out of government. Well, of course, that's what every politician says at every election. And indeed, there was a SAVE programme was introduced by the last administration, a big fanfare about it. Nothing seemed to have been announced, though, towards the end of its work, but, you know, it's supposed to have happened. Gerard Higgins, I think, came closest by pointing out that effectively you're cutting the bureaucracy, the management, I suppose, of government, but he was also sort of referring to cutting out management and to pay for doctors and nurses. And he must realise that most of the managers, in fact all the managers in government, are incredibly hard pressed, and they've been suffering cuts for many years. Paul Quine, again, very strong answers, almost sounded angry. Maybe that's what people want.
I think it was very passionate, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Although I detected, and again, as I say, I'm being super critical tonight, he did seem to be disparaging of everything he's not been involved with.
Isn't that a typical political technique, though?
Perhaps. Again, Claire Christian and Paul Quine were, well, unless things have changed dramatically in the last 5 years, I felt they've misunderstood the Mad March spend, which certainly existed probably 10, 15 years ago. But you go to any senior finance officer in government and suggest to them that they have this large pot of money left in March to be able to spend on things they don't need, and I think they'd probably throttle you.
But it's a public perception, though, and I know it is one that we at Manx Radio have questioned government departments about, and we were told, that doesn't happen. But the public doesn't see it that way, and I wonder whether perhaps if DOI working on roads seems to increase around that time, it doesn't do much to dispel that myth.
Perhaps that is the case, but I would have thought that the sitting candidates would know better by now. I mean, they haven't been in that long, so cut them a bit of slack.
Maybe they're just not towing the government line?
Well, they're certainly not doing that, and I have to say I've had quite a lot of admiration for both the former MHKs as they are now. They both seem to have hit the ground running since their election. The one candidate we've not mentioned so far was Sarah Maltby. Sarah, I thought, had a great start and a great finish. She's a little bit quiet in the middle, but had some very clear alternative left-of-centre philosophy, which was not shared by the other three candidates.
Very much a politician of the people, potentially.
Yes, that was very much her line, and so was very much as you would expect from a Labour Party candidate. Whether that's sufficient, obviously based on the debate that we heard tonight, she wasn't as strong as the other three in terms of getting her points over, but she still had some good points to make. So the people of Douglas South have a difficult job ahead. They've got one clear left-of-centre candidate, three other centre-right candidates to choose from, and we'll see how it turns out.
Did you want to mention the question about Douglas Corporation?
Oh, yes. There was one question from the floor, which I did note with a fair amount of irony, that a Douglas councillor was questioning the prospective politicians on what they would do if elected in relation to the government headcount, to try and get the headcount down. Now, this is a Douglas Borough councillor, a councillor in Douglas, the one remaining part of government, as far as I'm aware, that's never had an external review. So it seemed a little bit rich asking that question, although I think it's an important question to ask.
Okay, so again, a difficult one to call here. 4 strong candidates, and it's really just going to depend, pretty much like last night, really, where the voters' politics lie, I guess.
Yeah, certainly, and whether they decide that they want 2 centre-right candidates, whether they want 1 left, 1 right, I don't know. It'll be interesting, certainly on election night. Certainly one of the very senior political figures from this area, who I spoke to earlier, said election's too close to call.